My name is Kelly Williamson. I'm from Cosby, Tennessee, born and raised. Grew up here in the county. My dad worked at a manufacturing plant when I was a little kid, and then he went to work at the farmers co-op here in town. We farmed all the time, and as a little kid we had boiler chickens. So I had a little red wheelbarrow when I was about 3 that I pushed around the chicken house and fed chickens. Would earn supper. There wasn't anything like earning money at that time, you know. And we farmed. We had cattle. We had, you know, an old plow horse. Back in the day, we plowed our tobacco patches with a horse after you set them out, because we had a tractor to be able to do the setting with. But we used to peg tobacco out, basically. We'd stretch a string, run a whole row. Of course, we found that you could get more plants in a crooked row than you could a straight row too. But it was hard as hell to plow a crooked row. So just grew up learning how to work, man, and just do all the stuff that you did. And of course, you know, once I got a little bit older, early teens, I guess, other than being hell on wheels, I was a bicycle terror in the neighborhood too. And once I got a little bit older and started figuring out some stuff, we would, you got to hear stories, I guess, a lot. My daddy always said there's never anything good to happen at a beer joint. So he didn't go, and he didn't participate in that stuff. But the same fellas that were at the beer joint on Friday and Saturday night would be sitting at the store telling stories and whittling and talking about stuff that went on over the weekend. When I'd pick up bottles, we used to ride our bicycle and pick up, we called it dope bottles, and take them to the store and buy us a dope. So that was back when dope was something different than it is nowadays, for sure. But you sit around and hear all these stories, and you know, people would let stuff slip sometimes about your grandpa or who had liquor and that kind of stuff, because I mean, it was a tight-knit community, so everybody knew everybody, and they knew what everybody was doing. So that's, I got old enough to start asking questions, you know. And I guess as much as anything, I was probably a private investigator, because I got to following them around and seeing what they was doing and trying to figure it out. I got my ass beat a lot for that. But just a lot of stuff like that is how you start figuring out who's doing what, and you know, and being young enough to, I guess, be able to do a lot of stuff and be able to carry stuff and everything. My first memory of a steel site was one of the neighbors allowed me to go with him so I could carry some stuff. And it wasn't any of my family that would let me go, but he did. Of course, I was sworn to secrecy forever. But I really, after that, things kind of become a whirlwind in the moonshine world. You know, you know a lot of stuff. I don't remember who taught me what and where I learned what at, and I couldn't tell you the first trip I made to, you know, a still with somebody with the actual intent of going to make liquor, because you'd just been around it, you know, and snuck around to be around it. Mama was really hard on me though. Mama would, she'd question me, you know, where you been, what you been doing, and Dad, he was a little more laid back. He knew what was going on, so he knew not to ask, because he didn't want to make me lie. But Mom didn't care to make me lie, because that's just a good reason for her to beat the dog shit out of me. So I learned to bob and weave early. You know, I was probably 12, 13 years old to some degree, you know, right in that range. First time that I ever got to see anything like that. And then, you know, right along about that time, I mean, let's just be honest about where we live. I mean, we had a lot of people, marijuana was a prevalent thing in this neck of the woods, and we was always out in the woods riding motorcycles and stuff. So, you know, you'd see stuff you shouldn't see when you was out in the woods, and a steel site every once in a while. A lot of steels are not out in the woods like everybody wants to think they are. They'll be in a building somewhere or under a shed, and you know, you got to be kind of invited into that, because you don't just stumble up on a steel site, but you'll stumble up on a pot patch, or you would then, you know. So I'm thinking, the neighbor, he had seen where my motorcycle tracks had been pretty close to a pot patch. And he was talking to me about it, and he said, what do you think about that? And I said, I don't think much about it. Don't want to know about it. Don't care anything about it. Don't want to talk about it. And he said, well, I might need you to help me some every once in a while. So it's, you know, when you learn not to talk about stuff, people will trust you that wouldn't trust anybody else. So I guess that's kind of how it just went naturally, you know. And like I said, it's just been a natural progression. I don't even know, you know, a lot of the stuff that we've done over the years. Well, you know, of course, my daddy's passed away, and that's one of the things that my mom and I had a pretty good battle about. Mom, she didn't know that Dad had a still until she found it, because he had some stuff. He died the first day of July, and he had a still. I knew where it was at, and matter of fact, I had been real lucky and blessed in life, and had made some money on selling some property and stuff, and I had him a new still built. So he had a brand new 100-gallon copper pot, all the nicest stuff you could have, and he had that. And when he passed away, he had mash ready to run just in a few days. He died on the first day of July. We buried him on the 4th of July, had a party that night, and I run liquor on the 5th day of July. And you know, that was one of those places. I didn't get to spend a lot of time with him doing that kind of stuff, but what little time I did, and that was, I've always said, you know, my church is wherever I'm at. And whether it's on a tractor or whatever, I don't have time to go to church on Sundays. I can't knock the door down. But, you know, wherever you're at, and that's the same way with a lot of people want to go to the grave sites of their loved ones. Well, my daddy ain't in that grave, you know, but now his spirit was right where that building was, where that moonshine still was, and we'd have some conversations, you know. And my mom, I could park a vehicle and hide around from her a whole lot, but it just happened to be that where that was at was on our farm, and I'd had to do some work to it to make it a little easier for me to do, because I couldn't stay with it all the time. So I dug a ditch or two and done some stuff, and I've always had excavating equipment. So she said, what are you doing with a track hoe up there in the woods? I said, well, I'm making trails for a motorcycle. So her being nosy thought she'd come and check out all my trails that I was doing. She said, what's that building over there? That's just an old shed, Mom. Well, it's just, you know, what's in it? Nothing really. Well, why'd you dig a ditch to it? So while I was gone, she prowled around and found, you know, a little more stuff than she should have. And I remember coming in one day, and this was in the first year after Dad died. I come in one day. She said, I'm calling the sheriff's department because there's a still up there in that building. Oh, hell no, we're not going down that road. So me and Mom had a pretty good little battle about the moonshine still, and I had to promise her that I would quit and just keep it and not use it anymore because of the chance of getting in trouble, because I'm the only child, and you know, so that left me to be her caregiver pretty much. And of course then she didn't need caregiving, she needed looked after, or needed to watch after me, maybe. That's but she done everything she could to keep me out of trouble. So I didn't fool with any much. I had a few people around I knew made liquor, and I would trade in it and get what I needed and back and forth, but I wouldn't fool with any for a long time. Well, growing up, you know, if you go back to heroes, as you would think, Burt Reynolds will always be the bandit. Nothing's ever going to replace the bandit. You know, that's the thing. Of course, growing up, we watched Hee Haw, so Archie Campbell was. Grandpa, what's for dinner, Grandpa, you know. You know, a lot of stuff, I loved Walton's Mountain when I was a kid because, you know, you could associate to it. I thought about the mountain behind our house and, you know, the stuff that was there, and different people in the neighborhood that you could associate stuff with off of Walton's Mountain. And, you know, as I got older, I went through the same thing that all of us go through. My daddy did not know shit when I was 18 years old. But by the time I was 25, he had educated himself to be one of the smartest people that I'd ever met. So he had to be smart to get that smart in such a short period of time, you know. You know, there was different people in the neighborhood, you know, and in the county that would be heroes, you know, that a lot of stuff people don't realize, and it'd be somebody that you didn't even know about. Back then, when there was a death in the neighborhood, everybody took food, you know, everybody done stuff. But you kind of get to figuring out there's a few people that went that extra mile for everybody else, you know, and just did extra stuff for them. So, you know, I think that people that do stuff without any recognition or looking for recognition are probably unsung heroes, you know, pretty much. And the way I look at things, and it's, you know, I get a little bit of flack about Mark and Digger sometimes. You know, there'll be somebody don't like them, you know, on the show or something, but Mark and Digger are super good guys, and they are genuine. I'll tell you, I mean, I see Mark a lot more than I do Digger because he lives right down the road, but him and his wife, they know a lot of stuff that's going on around, and his wife Sally, she'll call me and be like, hey Kelly, we're going to take up some money and slip it to somebody for something. You know, just nobody has to know. It's just stuff that you do. And you know, and he says all the time, it don't cost anything to be kind, so just be kind to people. And don't get me wrong, I can have a come apart and cuss you just as bad as anybody else can, but for the most part, if you'll let me be good to you, I want to be. So we've been well blessed to get to meet a lot of people around the country. And a lot of people make moonshine that's never been on TV and not going to be on TV. If you'd have told me 6 years ago that I'd put everything I do on Facebook and do everything that we do, I'd have told you was an idiot, because, I mean, I didn't want anybody knowing anything. And these people don't want people knowing what they're doing either. And the whole underground moonshine world is just good old boys and good old girls and just good old people. And I don't mean they don't have to be old, they just old souls, and they believe in doing what's right, taking care of people, looking out for their family and their friends and strangers, you know. And if you'll see things here that happens, because we live in a tourist area, but you'll see an old guy in a broke down truck nearly stop to help somebody in a new Mercedes with a flat tire. And you know, he obviously can't afford a Mercedes, and they can't. But he'll stop and help them and do whatever he can for them. And I mean, there's families of that. You know, there's still a lot of good people in the world, and there's still a lot of people that's willing to go out there and put themselves out on a limb and sacrifice something that